How the Mafia Boss Escaped from Prison, FBI Files. Chapter 1. The Night Everything Changed. I used to believe that every man, no matter how dangerous, had a moment of clarity. A moment when he realized his life could have taken another path. Mine came at 3:47 a.m., on the coldest night of my sentence, while the fluorescent lights buzzed above my head like dying insects. My name is Marco Santori, once known as the Ghost of Midtown, the man the FBI chased for 12 long years. I was the one who never missed, never hesitated, never left a loose end. Until the waitress with trembling hands, soft brown hair, and a courage I still can't explain. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning of my escape, the night I realized I wasn't as alone as I thought. I had been locked away at Blackridge Federal Penitentiary for exactly 1,163 days. Long enough for the outside world to forget my name, long enough for the FBI to close my file, and long enough for betrayal to poison every corner of my memory. I wasn't supposed to get out. Men like me don't get second chances. We get concrete walls, steel bars, and a future measured in meal trays and court appeals that never arrive. But then she walked into my life. Emily Carter, a waitress who didn't belong in a place like Blackridge. She wasn't an inmate. She wasn't a guard's girlfriend. She wasn't even from my world. She simply worked at the prison cafeteria during night shifts, part of a contract the Bureau signed to cut costs. A civilian, in a place that ate civilians alive. The first time she served me, she didn't look me in the eye. Not because she feared me, but because she feared the room, the guards, the inmates, the responsibility. I used to watch her fingers. They shook when she handed out the trays. But over weeks, those trembling hands started to steady. And eventually, she looked at me. Really looked. And that was the beginning of everything. On that particular night, the one that changed the course of my life, I sat alone at a metal table bolted to the floor. The cafeteria was nearly empty. Most men were asleep or pretending to be. The fans creaked overhead, pushing cold air that smelled of bleach and disappointment. Emily moved quietly between tables, gathering trays. Her voice barely rose above a whisper when she finally spoke to me. "Marco," she said, glancing over her shoulder as if someone might hear her even though the nearest guard was half asleep. "You need to listen to me. Something is happening." Something in her tone, urgent, shaky, desperate, put me on edge. "What is it?" I asked, leaning forward, keeping my posture relaxed so the cameras wouldn't pick up tension. She swallowed hard. "They're planning to move you." My blood ran cold. "The FBI?" I whispered. "No," she said, shaking her head. "The guards." That was worse. Much worse. Because guards don't move high-value inmates unless they want the transfer to look like an accident. I had heard whispers in the cell blocks. Old enemies wanted me gone. Loose ends wanted tying. Men who once bowed their heads when I walked past were now in power, and they didn't want the Ghost of Midtown breathing the same air they did. "Emily," I said calmly, though inside I felt like the floor had tilted beneath me, "tell me exactly what you heard." She took a shaky breath. "I'm not supposed to be in the storage room after hours," she said. "But I was tonight. I heard 2 guards talking. They said the transfer request is fake. They're going to take you out the back gate, no cameras, no paperwork. They said once you're outside the fence." She stopped. I finished for her. "I won't make it past the road." She nodded. Her eyes glistened with fear. Fear for me, not of me. That was new. Unexpected. Unwelcome in a place built on distrust. "Why are you telling me?" I asked. "You know what I am." She hesitated, looking down at her hands. "I know what the world says you are," she whispered. "But the man who talks to me every night, that's not the man they describe in the files." For a moment, I forgot where I was. Forgot the bars, the chains, the sentence. Her voice reached a part of me I thought died years ago. But I couldn't let emotions cloud my mind. "Emily," I said quietly, "what do you want from me? Why risk this? If anyone finds out—" "I don't want anything," she cut in. "But I can't just stand by while they kill you." There it was. The truth. Someone cared whether I lived or died. Someone I hadn't paid, threatened, or manipulated. Someone good. Someone real. I leaned back, calculating. If they were planning to move me tomorrow night, that meant I had less than 24 hours. No allies. No leverage. Except her. And suddenly I realized. She wasn't telling me out of fear. She was telling me because she already had a plan. "How long have you known?" I asked quietly. "A week," she admitted. A full week. She had been debating whether to trust me or walk away. "And in that week," I said, "you've been thinking of a way to get me out, haven't you?" Her silence told me everything. "Emily," I said softly, "I won't involve you in something that could ruin your life." But she shook her head so fiercely her ponytail brushed her shoulders. "You don't understand," she whispered. "My life was ruined long before you. This job, this place, it's all temporary. I'm not attached to anything here. If they kill you, I'll regret staying silent for the rest of my life." Those words struck deeper than she could possibly know. People in my world betray. People in my world leave. People in my world pretend to care. But Emily meant what she said. "Tell me your plan," I whispered. She looked around once more, then slipped a folded piece of paper under my tray, so small it could have been mistaken for trash. "Read it when you're alone," she murmured. "Burn it afterward." My mind raced. A waitress. A civilian. A young woman with no connection to crime or violence. Yet she was planning something that would make the FBI reopen every file they'd ever written on me. Why risk everything for a man like me? Her eyes met mine as if she heard the question in my silence. "Because," she whispered, "everyone deserves one chance to choose a different life." Then she took my tray and walked away as if nothing had happened. Hours later, back in my cell, the paper burned between my fingers after I read it. Her plan wasn't naive. It wasn't reckless. It wasn't the fantasy of a woman blinded by sympathy. It was perfect. A flaw in the night shift schedule. A blind spot in the South Wing cameras. A maintenance corridor only cafeteria staff used. She even knew the timing of night guard rotations, the 2-minute window where one hallway was always left unpatrolled. She had been watching, listening, learning. Not for weeks. For months. Emily Carter, the trembling waitress who served prisoners meatloaf and stale bread, had quietly become the one person inside Blackridge who saw everything. And she had chosen to help me. Not because she needed me. Not because she feared me. But because she believed I shouldn't die in a place where justice didn't matter. For the first time in years, I felt something ignite inside me. Not anger, not vengeance. Hope. I lay on my bunk, staring at the ceiling as the lights dimmed. Tomorrow night. That was the deadline. Tomorrow night, I would either escape Blackridge or die in its shadow. And the only person standing between those two fates was a woman who should never have been a part of my world. Emily. The waitress who would become the most important piece of my story. The one who broke the first chain. The one who lit the fuse. The one who would risk her life to save mine. And as I closed my eyes that night, preparing for what awaited me, one thought echoed louder than the clanging of prison doors. If I get out of here, it won't be because I'm the ghost of Midtown. It'll be because of her. And tomorrow, we would begin the impossible. End of Chapter 1. If you want Chapter 2, another 10 minutes, just say, backhand index pointing right, continue with Chapter 2. Você diz, sim. O chat GPT diz. Perfeito. Vou continuar exatamente no mesmo estilo, ritmo e duração. Aqui está o capítulo 2, também com aproximadamente 10 minutos de fala estilo audiobook, totalmente inglês primeira pessoa. Quando quiser o capítulo 3, só dizer, continue com o capítulo 3. Blue Book: How the Mafia Boss Escaped from Prison, FBI Files. Audiobook, Chapter 2, almost equals 10 minutes. Title, The Blueprint of Freedom. Chapter 2, The Waitress with the Master Plan. Sleep didn't come that night. Not even for a second. I lay on my bunk, staring at the ceiling while the prison hummed with its usual symphony of distant voices, metal clangs, and the heavy footsteps of guards who believed they controlled every inch of Blackridge. They didn't. Not anymore. Not since Emily stepped into my story. The paper she gave me, a tiny square burned to ash now, had carried more power than any gun I ever held. Inside those lines, written with rushed handwriting, was the impossible. A blueprint for my escape. Not a fantasy. Not a desperate attempt. A plan that actually worked with the prison's rhythms. A plan created by someone who had spent months observing the clumsy patterns of bored guards and understaffed shifts. A plan I never could have built alone. I replayed the details in my mind, memorizing each step. At 1:12 a.m., the cafeteria loading door opened for the nightly food delivery, supplies for the next day. A truck with a blind spot in its rear camera. A door that didn't fully lock unless the guard shoved it twice. A moment when 2 officers turned their backs at the same time while checking the manifest. At 1:14 a.m., the security cameras in the south wing glitched for exactly 6 seconds, just long enough to slip through a maintenance hallway that only kitchen staff used. Emily had spent 3 months timing that glitch. At 1:16 a.m., the night shift guard responsible for the lower corridor had a habit of disappearing into the smoking room, breaking regulations, to enjoy a cigarette he didn't want logged. He was always gone for 90 seconds. Emily knew. Because she paid attention when no one else dared to. The brilliance of her plan wasn't the escape route itself. It was how she designed it around human nature. Guards were predictable, lazy, comfortable, overconfident. Emily had turned those flaws into stepping stones. And now I just needed one thing. A way out of my cell. That was the part of the note scribbled so small I almost missed it. At the bottom, in tiny letters, she had written, "You won't be in your cell at 1:10 a.m. I've taken care of it." What did that mean? What could a waitress possibly do? I didn't understand. Until the next night. The hours passed slowly, like syrup dripping down rusted metal. I felt every second pushing me toward the moment of truth. Dinner came and went. Lights dimmed. Guards yawned through their rounds. No one suspected a thing. At 12:58 a.m., I heard careful footsteps approaching. Not the heavy boots of a guard. Not the lazy shuffle of an inmate. Soft, quick, and nervous. Emily. She shouldn't have been anywhere near this cell block. Yet there she was, dressed in her cafeteria uniform, carrying a large rolling cart with trays stacked so high they rattled with every turn. A guard followed her, Officer Briggs. A man who had once slammed my head into a wall just for speaking too slowly. But tonight he wasn't suspicious. He wasn't alert. He was annoyed. "This better be fast," he grunted. "Night deliveries are not your job." "I'm sorry," Emily said, her voice gentle, almost apologetic. "The new supervisor told me the late trays needed to be taken out immediately." Briggs rolled his eyes. "She's new," he muttered to another guard. "Still terrified she'll lose her job." They laughed. That was her weapon. Not fear, not guilt, Being underestimated. Emily shot me a glance so quick anyone else would have missed it. But I didn't. I stood near the bars as she rolled the cart closer. When she stopped in front of my cell, she pretended to wipe her forehead. "Tray replacement," she murmured. Briggs groaned. "Just make it quick." She knelt, reaching into the bottom of the cart. When her hand came back up, it wasn't carrying a tray. It was carrying a key. Not just any key. A guard's master override key. The kind that could open any cell in this block. How she got it, I still don't know. I asked her a dozen times later. She never answered. She simply slipped the key through the bars, careful not to let Briggs see. My heart hammered, but my hands didn't shake. They never did. I caught the key with 2 fingers, silently turning it in the lock. The bolt slid open. The metal door loosened. Freedom sat on the other side of those few inches. Emily didn't look at me again. She spoke loudly to Briggs. "Can you help me lift this stack? It's too heavy." Briggs groaned again. The man hated work more than he hated inmates. He stepped forward. His back turned to me. Emily's body blocked the security camera's view. I slid the door open half an inch. Then a full inch. Then I stepped out. Not rushing. Not stumbling. Silent as a shadow. Emily moved the cart slightly to the right, creating a corridor behind her. A tunnel. A doorway. A message. "Go. Now." I didn't hesitate. I moved behind the cart, slipping into the blind spot of the camera she knew would be rotating away for another 3 seconds. Every detail. Every step. Every breath. She had planned it all. By the time Briggs turned again, I was gone, disappearing into the side hallway Emily had pointed out the night before with nothing more than a glance. The hallway was dark, narrow, and usually locked. But tonight it wasn't, because Emily had left the latch loose. Every second felt like a lifetime. I had escaped impossible situations before, but this was different. This wasn't the Mafia. This wasn't the street. This was the U.S. federal prison system. And a civilian waitress was now the architect of a federal-level escape. For a moment I wondered. Was she scared? Did she regret helping me? Did she realize what awaited her if this went wrong? But then I remembered her voice. Everyone deserves one chance to choose a different life. I pushed forward. The next step of her plan came at 1:10 a.m., just as she promised. A supply closet door on the left. Unlocked. I slipped inside. On the floor sat a bundle. A janitor uniform. A cap. Non-slip shoes. And a fake ID badge with the name Miguel Santos. Emily had thought of everything. As I changed, my reflection stared back at me from a dusty mirror. Marco Santori, the ghost of Midtown, was disappearing. In his place stood a man no guard would look twice at. A man who blended in. A man without a past. The transformation was almost symbolic. I wasn't escaping as the Mafia boss the FBI hunted. I was escaping as the man Emily believed I could become. At 1:12 a.m., right on schedule, the loading dock door buzzed. The nightly delivery truck arrived. I walked the corridor calmly, pushing a mop bucket Emily left as my prop. Shifts overlapped here. Guards never paid attention. As I approached the loading area, voices echoed. "Truck's late again. Sign the paperwork. Unload those crates." No one looked at me. No one questioned me. Just another janitor doing another nothing shift. I slipped toward the back of the truck, exactly where Emily had said the blind spot was. My heart hammered so hard I thought the guards could hear it. I waited for the moment. The perfect moment. When no one was looking. No one counting. No one caring. At 1:14 a.m., The cameras glitched. 6 seconds. I moved. I climbed into the back of the truck, sliding behind stacked crates, unseen. The cold air hit my lungs. I hid beneath a tarp. The truck engine rumbled. Doors slammed. Paperwork shuffled. A guard cursed. Then the metal gate rolled shut. Darkness swallowed me whole. The truck started moving. And I realized I was out. Not free yet, but out. And all because of her. Because a waitress with trembling hands didn't just serve prisoners meals. She served me my first chance at life. End of chapter 2. When you're ready, say. Backhand index pointing right. Continue com o capítulo 3. Você diz. Sim. O chat GPT diz. Perfeito. Aqui está o capítulo 3. Inglês, primeira pessoa, estilo audiobook, com cerca de 10 minutos de fala, aprox. 1.700 to 1.900 palavras. Quando quiser o capítulo 4, só dizer, continue com o capítulo 4. Blue Book How the Mafia Boss Escaped from Prison, FBI Files. Audiobook, Chapter 3, almost equals 10 minutes. Title, The Road Out of Hell. Chapter 3, The Truck, the Storm, and the Promise. Darkness wrapped around me like a shroud. It smelled of metal, gasoline, and the faint sweetness of old produce crates. The truck rattled violently as it rolled over potholes on the road outside Blackridge. Every bump sent a jolt up my spine, reminding me that this wasn't freedom yet. This was the space between life and death. I breathed slow, steady, controlled. Old habits. Necessary habits. Because if I panicked now, if I made a sound, if I shifted in the wrong direction, the guards escorting the truck would hear. And everything Emily risked, her job, her safety, her future, would be for nothing. The engine hummed with a steady growl. The tires hissed over wet pavement. A storm was rolling in. Good. Rain masked noise. Lightning distracted guards. Storms made weak men sloppy. Emily couldn't have predicted the weather, but it felt like fate was on our side. For once. The truck slowed near the outer gates. A metal groan echoed through the compartment as the prison's main barrier opened. I held my breath. If they did a random inspection. If a guard decided to open the back door. If a dog barked. My escape would end before it even began. I listened. Muffled voices outside. A low laugh. A guard complaining about the rain. Then, a thud. Heavy boots circling the truck. A flashlight's glow bled through tiny cracks in the crate seams, casting thin white lines across my hands. Footsteps approached the rear door. Stopped. My heartbeat slammed against my ribs. A voice. Everything look good? Another voice. Yeah. Same driver as always. Manifest checks out. Silence. A moment stretched so long it scraped my nerves raw. Then, all right. Open the gate. Metal clanked. Hydraulics hissed. The truck lurched forward. I exhaled, the air trembling from my lungs. The prison faded behind us. For the first time in years. There was no concrete ceiling above me. No bars. No guards. Just the road. Just possibility. Just survival. Minutes passed. Maybe 10, maybe 20. Hard to say in darkness. I kept still, listening for anything off, anything wrong. Eventually, the truck made a sharp right turn, then slowed again. The smell changed. Less bleach, more mud and pine. We were outside federal property. Step 1. Complete. But Emily's plan didn't end here. She knew I couldn't stay hidden forever. She predicted what guards might do. She mapped what roads trucks like this took. The second part of her plan relied on timing. At exactly 1:40 a.m., The truck always stopped at a way station 2 miles outside Blackridge. Standard procedure. Mandatory. But the night crew at that station? They didn't do their job. They never inspected anything properly. They were too tired or too lazy. Emily counted on that. But she also prepared for the worst. Her note had warned me. If they inspect the truck, you have one option. Wait for the rain. Use it. I didn't know what that meant. Until the storm finally broke. Thunder cracked open the sky. Rain hammered the metal roof of the truck like 1,000 fists. The vehicle slowed, wipers squealing. I peeked between the crates, tiny cracks in darkness that revealed faint shapes outside. A way station. White fluorescent lights. A bored man in a poncho. Lightning flashed, illuminating every corner for a split second. The guard waved lazily toward the driver's window. Didn't approach. Didn't check the back. Didn't care. Go on through, he shouted over the storm, annoyed at being wet. The truck rolled past without stopping. I almost smiled. Almost. But smiles are luxuries. And I hadn't earned any yet. The truck continued down the road. The rain intensified, drumming, echoing, drowning out everything else. Emily had marked the next crucial point in her note. At 1:56 a.m., the truck slows for a sharp curve. That's your jump point. Jump point. Her instructions didn't leave room for interpretation. The truck wasn't taking me to safety. I had to leave it before dawn. Before guards realized my cell was empty. Before the prison went into lockdown. Before the FBI pulled every camera feed from the county. I crouched, gripping the cold metal floor. Time distorted again. Was it 1:50? 1:55? Then the truck decelerated sharply. A tight turn tilted the crates. My shoulder slammed into a side panel. This was it. My moment. My gamble. My rebirth. Or my death. I crawled toward the back door, careful not to make noise. The handle was inches from my fingers. Rain leaked through its edges, dripping icy water onto my knuckles. Emily had instructed. Jump when you feel the truck lean. The rain will hide your impact. Roll downhill. Don't look back. Easier written than done. I braced myself, grabbed the handle, and pulled. Cold air slapped my face. The road rushed past beneath me, dark, slick, dangerous. I took a breath. A deep, final breath of the man I used to be. Then I jumped. My body flew through the air. Wind roared in my ears. For a split second, nothing existed except gravity pulling me down. Then the impact hit. Hard. I struck the wet grass beside the road, rolling violently down a muddy embankment. Debris tore at my clothes. Rocks slammed into my ribs. I didn't scream. I didn't flinch. Pain was an old friend. A familiar one. When I finally came to a stop, mud coated my arms, my clothes, my face. My breath came in ragged bursts. Behind me, the truck continued its route, oblivious. Its red taillights disappeared around a bend. I lay there in the darkness, chest heaving, rain soaking into my skin, and for the first time in years. I wasn't on prison soil. The world was open again. But open didn't mean safe. The next phase depended entirely on her. I crawled to my knees, then pushed myself to my feet, wincing at the throbbing in my left shoulder. Could have been dislocated. Could have been worse. Didn't matter. I was alive. And the plan wasn't over. Emily's directions echoed in my mind. Follow the tree lean east for 800 meters. You'll find the old forestry shed. Wait for me there. I didn't question how she knew about a shed guards didn't even use. Emily knew things people never bothered to notice. She saw the world differently. I limped across the muddy ground, slipping twice, catching myself each time. Thunder rolled overhead. Rain soaked the earth, turning every step into a battle. But eventually, through the dark curtain of trees, a shape emerged. A small structure, barely standing. Wood warped, roof sagging, door hanging crooked. The forestry shed. I approached, pushed the door gently. It creaked open. Inside was nothing but dust, a rusted desk, and a single lantern. I stepped in, leaning against the wall. My entire body trembled from adrenaline, exhaustion, and the unspoken weight of what came next. Emily said she'd come. She said she'd meet me here. But part of me wondered, had she changed her mind? Had she been caught? Had she walked away after giving me this chance? Minutes stretched. Rain pounded the roof. Wind howled through the cracks. Then, footsteps. Light ones. Fast ones. I tensed, ready to strike, ready to vanish if necessary. The door opened. And there she was, Emily, her hair plastered to her face from the rain, her breathing heavy, her hands trembling not from fear, but from running. When she saw me, relief washed over her face. "You made it," she whispered. I stared at her, unable to speak for a moment. She had actually come. She had left the prison, risked everything, followed the plan to its end. For me. "I told you I would," I finally said. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. Her voice shook as she spoke. "We're not safe yet. They'll realize you're gone soon. We need to move." "We?" I asked. Her eyes met mine, steady, fearless. "I'm not leaving you now." Emily Carter, the quiet waitress with trembling hands, stood before me drenched, exhausted, and determined. And for the first time since the night she warned me, I believed we might actually make it. Together. End of Chapter 3. Ready quando quisser. Para continuer. Backhand index pointing right diga. Continue calm o capítulo 4. Você diz. Sim. Pode ser de 5 minutos esse capítulo. O chat GPT diz. Perfeito. Aqui está o capítulo 4, Inglês, primeira pessoa, estilo audiobook, com aprox. 5 minutos de fala, cerca de 900 to 1.000 palavras, mantendo o mesmo tom e sequência de historia. Quando quiser o próximo, eso dizer. Backhand index pointing right, continue com o capítulo 5. Blue Book How the Mafia Boss Escaped from Prison, FBI Files. Audiobook, Chapter 4, almost equals 5 minutes. Title, The Shelter in the Storm. Chapter 4, The Choice That Changed Everything. The storm howled outside the forestry shed, wind slamming against the wooden walls as if trying to tear them down. Rain hammered the roof hard enough to drown out every sound except our breathing. Emily stood dripping on the dusty floorboards, cheeks flushed from running. Her clothes clung to her like second skin. She was exhausted, physically and emotionally, but her eyes were steady, determined. I had seen that look before, on men ready to die for something they believed in. Only this time, it wasn't a soldier or a criminal. It was a waitress. "For now," she said, brushing wet hair from her face, "we have maybe 30 minutes before they notice you're gone." 30. I repeated. "You think it'll take that long?" She nodded. "Night shift guards are lazy. They'll assume you're asleep. A head count won't happen until the next rotation." She wasn't guessing. She knew. "Emily," I said quietly, "you didn't have to come with me." Her eyes flickered, but her voice stayed firm. "Yes, I did." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the tiny shed. The glow caught her expression, fear mixed with resolve. She was terrified, but pushing through it anyway. "Do you understand what this means?" I asked. You run with me. You don't get your old life back. She let out a shaky breath. My old life wasn't much of a life. That answer hit hard. I stepped closer, not threatening, just trying to read her face. What were you planning to do next? After I got out. She hesitated, then reached into her jacket pocket. A folded map. She spread it across the dusty desk. It was marked with red lines, arrows, circles, months of planning. You thought of everything, I murmured. No, she said. Just everything I could. Her voice carried no pride, only urgency. She pointed to a forest trail behind the shed. This path leads to the old ranger road. It hasn't been patrolled in years. If we follow it for 3 miles, we'll reach an abandoned cabin. Dry clothes, food, a first aid kit. I left supplies there. My chest tightened. You prepared all of that? I didn't know if you'd ever need it, she admitted. But something told me to be ready. I sat on the edge of the desk and stared at her for a long moment. This woman, this stranger I met through metal bars and cafeteria trays, had risked her job, her safety, her life, for me. And I still didn't understand why. Emily, I said softly, why are you doing this? Her breath trembled. She looked down at her soaked shoes, then back up at me. Because I couldn't watch them kill you. Not after I saw who you really are. I swallowed. I'm not a good man, I warned. But you're not the monster they said you were, she said. I've served your meals for months. I've watched you talk to people no one else cares about. I've seen you give your bread to the old inmates who can't chew the tough stuff. I've seen the way you try to protect people in there, even when no one's watching. She stepped closer. You're capable of more than they believe. More than you believe. Her voice cracked at the end. For a moment, the storm outside faded away. All I heard was her. All I felt was something dangerous. Something that didn't belong in a prison break. Something I couldn't afford. Hope. I don't know how to repay you, I said quietly. You don't, she replied. Just don't waste the chance. She folded the map again and shoved it into my hands. We leave in 30 seconds, she said. The rain's loudest now. It'll cover our footsteps. I nodded, pulling the hood of my stolen jacket forward. As I moved toward the door, she reached out and caught my wrist. Her fingers were cold, freezing, but the grip was firm. Marco, she whispered, for the rest of tonight, you don't go anywhere without me. Understand? I turned to face her fully. The waitress who once shook when handing out trays now stood ready to outrun the federal government. I understand, I said. She released my wrist. Lightning flashed again. Thunder rolled. Emily pulled the shed door open, rain exploding inside. Ready? She asked. I looked at her, soaked, trembling, brave, and felt something shift deep inside me. Let's get out of here, I said. And together, we stepped into the storm. Chapter 5. The Last Door to Freedom. The night air hit my face like a shock, a reminder that this wasn't a dream, wasn't a fantasy. I was outside. Outside the prison walls that had swallowed my name and stripped me of everything I once commanded. But escaping those walls was only the beginning, because freedom, real freedom, had one last door. Emily tugged my sleeve as we crouched behind the maintenance trucks. Her breathing was shaky, but her eyes were sharp, burning with that same stubborn courage that had gotten us this far. 3 minutes, she whispered. That's how long until they locked down the entire perimeter. 3 minutes. That was all that separated me from the life the FBI said I'd never see again. She led me to a drainage tunnel at the far edge of the prison grounds, a place so forgotten that moss grew like hair on the walls. She handed me a flashlight, but I could barely focus on the beam. All I could think about was her. "You didn't have to do this," I told her as we stepped inside. Our voices echoed behind us like ghosts. "Yes," she said softly. "I did." We crawled through the narrow passage, water dripping on our backs, the smell of rust mixing with the cold. Behind us, somewhere far away, the sirens wailed louder. Boots hit the pavement. Shouts filled the night. We were running out of time. At the end of the tunnel was a rusted grate, sealed shut with a padlock. Emily wiped mud from her cheek and reached into her pocket. She pulled out a small tool, hands trembling as she attacked the lock. I could hear it, her fear, her courage, all tangled together. "Hurry," I whispered. "I'm trying." Then, click, the lock fell into the mud. She pushed the grate open, and fresh air flooded in. Grass, soil, trees, real earth beneath my hands for the first time in years. We climbed out, and the tunnel disappeared behind us like a fading chapter. Ahead of us, hidden between tall pines, was a black car with its engine already running. "You arranged a car?" I asked. She didn't look at me. "I arranged everything." I stared at her, this girl who used to serve drinks and smile shyly from behind a bar counter. A girl who had nothing to do with my world, yet chose to walk straight into its darkest corner. She opened the driver's door. "Get in. They'll be here any minute." But I didn't move. "Emily," I said, "why? Why risk all of this for me?" She finally looked at me, and for a moment all the alarms, all the danger, all the fear vanished. "Because," she said, "before you were the boss, you were the only person who ever treated me like I mattered." A tear slipped down her cheek. And I wasn't going to lose the only good thing that ever walked into my life. I stepped closer, brushing my thumb across her cheek, wiping that tear away. The woman who saved my life was standing in front of me, shaking but unbroken. Then headlights flashed behind the trees. Voices. Dogs barking. We didn't have a second to lose. "Emily," I whispered, "get in the car." We slammed the doors shut just as a spotlight cut through the branches. She hit the gas, and the tires spun, flinging dirt behind us. The car roared forward, tearing down the forest road. Shouts faded behind us. The dogs became echoes. The prison disappeared in the rearview mirror. Every mile we drove felt like shedding a layer of the man I was forced to become. And when the sun started rising, painting the sky in gold and fire, I looked at Emily. She was exhausted, shaking, staring at the road with a kind of fierce determination that made my heart ache. "We made it," she whispered. "Because of you." She glanced at me, a tired smile tugging at her lips. "What happens now?" I reached across the seat and took her hand, gently lacing my fingers with hers. "Now," I said, "we disappear. Together." The road stretched out before us, dangerous, uncertain, but ours. For the first time in years, I felt alive. Not as a Mafia boss. Not as a fugitive. But as a man given a second chance by the one person he never deserved, yet desperately needed. As the car sped into the horizon, the FBI files would say I vanished. But the truth is simple. I didn't escape alone. Emily saved me. And in saving me, she became my freedom. The end.